Hi everyone, my name is Natalie DC. Welcome back to my channel. I am a reader, writer, and artist here to talk about books with you, and art, and maybe a little bit of writing. In today's video, I will be going over all of the pink books that I read in the month of September. I am very aware this video is very late, but better late than never. I will be going over all 11 pink books that I read. Without further ado, let's get started. The first pink book that I read in the month of September is Doughnuts and Doom by Balazs Lorinczi. I hope I'm pronouncing their name right. This is a graphic novel about a young witch named Margot and a budding rock star named Elena, who have a very chaotic magical run-in and must grapple with their feelings for one another amidst a very mysterious curse that seems to have popped up in Elena's rock star career. This is a very brief graphic novel with a very lovely art style. While it is mainly monochromatic, there are many uses of pink. I believe the graphic novel was mostly in like bluish hues, but there were some uses of pink to signify like where magic is happening, which I think was a really unique and creative way to use color to enhance the storytelling of this graphic novel. So I love it when graphic novels use colors, even if it's just a little bit, it really adds a lot. So I love that about this graphic novel. The characters also had a lot of chemistry. I loved their scenes together. I thought the romance was super cute. And yeah, overall this was a super lighthearted read that definitely got me back into the spirit of reading, because before reading this book I was having a really hard time picking up books, especially having this challenge looming over the horizon of reading pink books in September. I was like, I don't want to do this. College is starting, like I'm not gonna have time. But this was the perfect, like, easy, light read to get me back into reading, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. So I gave it 4 stars. I think it was a really solid debut, and I'm looking forward to checking out more from this author. The next pink book that I read in the month of September is Anything You Can Do by Chloe Colvard. This is a chapbook actually published by my poetry chapbook publisher, Bottle Cap Press. It is a collection of prose, poems, and photography pieces from this artist and writer that I actually follow on Instagram. So I actually knew about this author prior to reading this book, and that's how I found out about this book, and I wanted to read it. So yeah, and because it's through my publisher, I was like, yeah, I want to buy it and read it. So I actually have it here, and it has this really stunning cover. Let's see if it can focus. Yep, it has this really stunning cover that I was really drawn to, and this is the blurb on the back. So yeah, and it's a very thick collection as well, but I will get into the contents because I wasn't as crazy about the contents. I'm so sorry. I'm going to talk about it. But yes, I do own this. And essentially it's a collection of prose poems, short stories, and snapshots that all deal with themes of womanhood, family, dating, and power dynamics within relationships. Those themes I was very much vibing with as well. Essentially this follows like a story of the main character, who is also the author, who moves to New York City for the first time all by herself at the age of 19. So it kind of goes through an arc of her learning to navigate living in the city by herself at such a young age. Now in total there are supposed to be 17 prose pieces and 10 visuals, and this is representative in the table contents. However, my copy, this is most likely a technical issue that happened during printing. My copy was a bit messed up. It had duplicate pages of the same piece, and it was missing a few pages of pieces that were supposed to be in this, so hence why my experience reading was not the best. There were also formatting of the chapbook itself was also a bit off. There was a lot of weird spacing and even typos in some of the written pieces, which really just took me out of the reading experience, and overall I didn't have the best time reading this as I would have liked. So I gave this 3 stars. I do still really enjoy the author's works like that she posts on her Instagram. This chapbook just wasn't for me. Possibly if I had a properly formatted and printed chapbook, this would have been a better reading experience, but as of right now I did give this piece 3 stars. My favorite like little poem from this collection was the poem Twang that just has a lot of really nice written vignettes that I really loved. I also really loved the photography slash collage pieces that I saw in this chapbook were really, really beautiful. So yeah, I was a bit disappointed that I didn't get to see all of what this chapbook had to offer. If you are still interested in this synopsis of the chapbook, I would still recommend you purchase it, as it is still supporting an indie publisher. It could very possibly be that this was just a one-time like misprint of what I received. I highly doubt that all of the copies are like this. So I do believe that if you, for example, were to purchase a copy, it would be very full and have all the correct pages, nothing missing or duplicated. Overall, just wasn't for me. Maybe one day I can get a properly formatted copy of this book and I'll be able to kind of start again with it. But for now, that's my rating. The next pink book that I read in the month of September is A Touch of Jen by Beth Morgan. This is one of the weirdest books I've ever read. Just gonna preface my entire review by saying that. This book is a horror comedy that centers around two service workers who are in a relationship with one another, Remy and Alicia, and they're not very happy in their relationship, but they're bound together by their shared obsession with Remy, the boyfriend, his former co-worker Jen, who they both follow on Instagram, and they're very obsessed with her looks and her lifestyle, and they basically just want to be her. This book takes a turn once they meet Jen in real life, and she invites them on a surfing trip to the Hamptons with all of her rich friends and her rich boyfriend. Remy, he's kind of just playing it off like, I don't wanna, just trying to seem cool, like I'm not interested, when actually he is interested. And Alicia, she's very much interested and she does not try to hide it. She wants to be this girl. From there, things take a turn for the worse. There's some magical like horror elements that start to arise on this trip, and yeah, it gets very weird. Shit goes down in the fourth act. Like, it's a weird time, definitely. I did not know what to expect when I first read this book. Synopsis, I actually thought this was a lesbian couple for a good few pages until I realized there were, yeah, I read too many gay things, guys. I have mixed feelings about this book because while I was very engaged with the story, the characters I did not like, and the ending was just so out of left field. It just threw me for a loop. The writing is very matter of fact, which in a way kind of clashes with the humoristic like elements of the story. Like, it's supposed to be funny, but there's a lot of deadpan humor that normally would be up my alley, but oftentimes the jokes are kind of done in such a deadpan manner that it almost feels like pretentious. Like, oh, I don't know how to explain it. It was just, the writing style felt just a little bit off to me, especially for this genre of writing. The characters themselves, Remy and Alicia, the two main characters that we are stuck in their perspectives for, are very unlikable, and this problem only gets worse as the book goes on. It's not like they grow, they become better people, like they learn that they're not a good fit for one another. No, they are bad people, and they're bad people at the beginning, and they are bad people by the end of the book. And the plot is so wacky it simply cannot be predicted, which that could be a green flag for a lot of readers, like, oh, this is such an unpredictable book, you'll never know what happens next. But for me, it's just like nothing made sense, and that put me off. I mentioned this in my Goodreads review, but I think this book would have worked a lot better as a novella. This is just a full like 300+ page novel, and there are a lot of dull moments in this book where it's just the characters, like nothing's happening, the characters are just sitting around being self-loathing. Remy, I hated him the most. Alicia, I could get behind, she's very traumatized, and that's why she's so insecure and she wants to be Jen so bad. Remy, he has like zero redeeming qualities. I'm so sorry. Yeah, there are many moments where nothing's happening. The characters are just sitting around being like, oh, I wish I was Jen. Oh, I wish Jen would like me. And it's like, nothing's happening. Let's pick up the pace. Like, this is supposed to be a horror comedy. I'm not laughing and I'm not like afraid. So what's going on? When I say the fourth part of the book gets wild, I mean it gets wild. I'm not gonna spoil anything, but a monster shows up. We have to defeat the monster, a main character dies, like it's this whole thing. And then the ending is very like ambiguous, like ooh, spooky, but also nuts, like batshit. It threw me for the loop, guys. I'm not gonna lie. Like, the ending kind of lost me. Especially since this seems to try to be some sort of commentary, and I'm not sure what the commentary is supposed to be on. Is it supposed to be on parasocial relationships, which is what it seemed to be leaning towards at the beginning? Is it just supposed to be a simple horror comedy, or is it supposed to be some sort of feminist perspective? I gotta be frank with you guys, I did not get this book. Granted, I did give it 3.25 stars just alone. It was very engaging. Some parts did definitely bore me, but once I got to that fourth part, it was like, I just kept turning the page. So it got me, let's say. I was hooked, and that fundamentally is a integral part of storytelling, so not gonna say it failed as a book. So yes, I did give this 3.25 stars. I would never pick up this book again, but I'm intrigued by Beth Morgan's other works, so I might read more of her work in the future. We shall see. But yeah, those are my feelings on this book. If you did read this book, please let me know what you thought, because I'm conflicted and I'm confused and I need guidance, because I think a lot of the Goodreads reviews kind of emulated my confusion as well, but a lot of people just simply really love this book, and I don't know if I could get behind that personally. The next pink book that I read in the month of September is Slow Days, Fast Company, The World, the Flesh, and LA by Eve Babitz. Some of you guys might know, if you watch this channel, is that I've been really getting into Eve Babitz's work. She is a women's lit author from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. This novel is actually a collection of essays, so it very much veers on nonfiction. A lot of her work does. Essentially, this book is a collection of short essays. It's focused around Eve Babitz's love of LA, and each essay, it takes place in the 60s and 70s in LA. I'd say I'm not gonna go too much into this book. One, because I read it like a month ago, so I don't remember much. Two, there's not much really to say about this book. It is very much Eve Babitz, and I do mostly mean that as a compliment. Like, I love her writing style so much. Her prose is so entrancing, it's ridiculous. Like, I'm pretty sure she put like drugs in her writing or something, because I love it so much. Hence why I gave this book 3.5 stars. Overall, I think the essays in this, like the content itself, pack the least punch for me, hence why there's not a lot of moments that are memorable for me, but the writing itself, like, very inspiring. I also, during the reading of this, I found out that Eve Babitz, from a cool hippie, she turned into like a recluse, like Trump supporter or like Republican. So that did not help my love of this reading experience. It's kind of when my opinions of Eve Babitz kind of dipped a little, but you know, she's my problematic fave, okay? I can look up to her as a writer without, you know, supporting her views, so, and also she's dead, so that helps. But yeah, problematic fave, Eve Babitz, another book from hers. I did enjoy. This was my least favorite Eve Babitz read, but I still enjoyed it. It did take me quite a while to get through, mainly because the essays weren't that very engaging, but if you're a fan of Eve Babitz, you will probably enjoy this book as much as I did, if not more, so give it a read if you so choose. The next pink book that I read in the month of September is My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness by Kabi and Nagata, translated by Jocelyne Allen. This is a graphic novel memoir. We all know how much I love graphic novel memoirs. It's a manga. It is in the manga style, and it's by a Japanese author, and it's the first part of a series in which the author catalogs her experiences being liberated in her sexuality after being very sheltered for most of her life. This book is very vulnerable. It's probably one of the most vulnerable reads that I've read in a while. Content warnings for like self-harm, suicidal ideation, and eating disorders, because there's a lot of very, I'd say, graphic depictions of those in this manga. This is actually the first manga I've ever read. Not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but you know, mostly deals with the author's mental health and sexuality. It discusses her first time going to a love hotel, so we get to see scenes in which she's navigating that as well. Overall, it's a very, I'd say, awkward read, because the author is very awkward during these experiences, but it's also very wholesome, seeing her opening up to others, even when she doesn't open up. The people in these love hotels that she's interacting with are very understanding, and they're like, it's okay, like, you just got to keep doing this, opening yourself up to others. So as I understand it, and this was after my reading experiences, I looked into this series, and I saw that many people criticize the author, you know, books down the line. This is a very long series. I think there's like 6 or something books. It's like a lot of mangas, and I'm pretty sure these were self-published before they got into like book form. Like they were self-published online, and then it got into book form. To my understanding, the author doesn't really seem to change her ways at all. She's very stuck in her ways, and people criticize this, which that's always the thing with publishing memoirs. It's very, especially like in a serialized form like this, it's very hard to separate the character from the author themselves. So people kind of treat the character that is in this book as the author themselves, and criticizes them for whatever the characters do in the book or don't do, which I really find a slippery slope. Like, I don't know this author personally, so I'm not going to judge their life choices based on these moments that they've chosen to share in their book. With that said, I did enjoy this book overall. I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was a really unique concept. I had never read a manga before that explored these themes, or just a manga in general. I love me a graphic novel memoir. I thought the art was really cute. I wish it relied less on text, because there is a lot of text in this book alongside the art, and I wish there was less text and more of us just experiencing everything through the art. Overall, I enjoyed it. I'm probably still gonna check out the other author's other works. And yeah, I would recommend this book if the synopsis interests you. I think it delves into these themes very authentically. This is a very careful book. It seems to have been made with a lot of care, and I think you can really see that through the art. So I would recommend it personally. The next pink book that I read in the month of September is Dyscalculia, a love story of epic miscalculation by camonghne Felix. This is another memoir in the form of poetry, so it's like a poetry memoir, but it's also like sort of prose poetry, very genre mixing a book. Very brief read as well, and essentially it uses themes of math and the disorder dyscalculia, which is essentially a disorder that I did not know about before reading this book, but essentially this disorder makes it difficult for one to learn math or understand math, and this author has this disorder, has had it since she was young, and she uses this as a metaphor to talk about why she has had so many mishaps in her love life and why her love life has gone so awry. And it also talks a lot about mental health. These themes really resonated with me. I thought the writing was super raw and beautiful. The cover is stunning as well, and even though this book talks about very heavy subject matter, very heavy themes, I found myself breezing right through this book. Like, I finished it in one sitting, and definitely has something to do with the fact that it's made up of, you know, poems, and it takes place in parts, so it's very easy to section out. But overall, I think also just the writing style itself was super like accessible, and yet very beautiful and lovely in its verse. And yeah, I really love this book way more than I was expecting to. I also really loved the use of math as a metaphor for romance. I know these things, math and romance, seem so opposite from one another, but the author really puts them together and makes them mean the other. It just makes total sense, and it's just so unique. I'd never seen it done before, and it really blew me away, honestly. As I said, I really did not expect to love this book as much as I did, but I was thoroughly impressed. I gave the book 4.75 stars. In the end, I actually wished it was a little longer. As I said, I read this so quickly that I just wanted more, but I do understand why it was the length it was. I think it was very effective in its messaging, and yeah, overall, I really love this book. So if you're gonna take away one of these recommendations from this video, please let this be the one, because it was so good. I'm definitely gonna check out more of camonghne Felix's other works, and yeah, on to the next one. The next pink book that I read in the month of September is The New Queer Conscience by Adam Ely. This is another installment of the Pocket Change Collective, which is a series of books that were published from the perspectives of these activists. They wrote these little pocket books that talk about intersectionality, like climate change, all of these areas of expertise that they are from. So this activist, Adam Ely, he is a queer Jewish person who in this book argues from the perspective of needing intersectionality in LGBTQ+ interests, and as well as queer solidarity, which he terms the new queer conscience, which basically prioritizes kindness above all else, which I found it really empowering, because I'm also a person who prioritizes kindness, and it's like awesome to see that this activist is trying to teach that through his writing. And yeah, I really agreed with this messaging, and I really enjoyed this pocket book overall. These books are very short, like 30 pages or something, so I do wish it was longer, obviously. I also wish the author talked more about his own personal experiences, because he is queer and Jewish, so his experiences are very relevant to this topic, and I would have loved to hear even more anecdotes from his life. Obviously, that's his prerogative if he wants to share it or not, but this book very much hinges on statistics that I mostly knew about. So while it is a good beginner book for people who are new to this topic, overall I didn't really learn much, and I wish we got to see more of the activists and the author's personal experiences shine through. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good read. I gave it 3.75 stars. Again, it's a very good beginner book for these issues. I think it was done in a very like accessible way, as well as the illustrations, which were done by Ashley Lukashevsky. These illustrations are really, really gorgeous, and they're in all the Pocket Change Collective books. So if you like this pocket book, you will probably like the other pocket books that are around. I read these for the Rainbow Reading Challenge, not only because they have such color-coded covers, but also because they're very small and very easy to you know, read through in the middle of a month when I'm worried that I'm not going to read that many books in a month. So it's a nice, just very quick read, and it can be informative as well. On to the next one. So I am going to be honest with you guys and say that these last 4 books I did not read in September. I actually had to extend my my reading limit from the end of September to like the first week of October, because I was going through it as a college girly. I was going through it, and I was unable to read all the books I wanted to in September. So I'm gonna be honest with you, I kind of lied on Goodreads saying that I finished these in September. The internet is fake anyway, guys. It's fine. No, but I just wanted to be honest with you guys that these books, technically I didn't read in September, but it is what it is. I'm gonna put them in this video because they're pink. The next book that I read in the month of September is Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl by Andrea Lawlor. This is a magical realist literary fiction novel that takes place in the 90s, specifically 1993 in Iowa City, and it follows the main character, Paul Polydoris. He is a queer person. He tends bar at this college town. He has a lesbian best friend. He makes zines. He's overall a very creative and fun person. But what the reader does not know, which we get to see throughout the book, is that he is actually a shapeshifter, so he can actually change forms between gender presentation. Yeah, it's all about him kind of navigating life as this shapeshifter person. Depending on the situation he's in, he will present male or he'll present female. He'll change his body parts to reflect that. It is very much a story of belonging, of this character kind of trying to find a place in which he belongs. So as I said, yes, this is a very genre-bending character study. It is very much focused on Paul's perspective and Paul's perspective only. It takes place across America. So first we start out in Iowa City where Paul is, and then we move to Provincetown where Paul moves to live with his girlfriend, as he is now present as female, and changes his name to Polly and lives with his girlfriend Diane in Provincetown for a few months. And eventually we see him also move to San Francisco, I believe. And yeah, it's a really unique premise. I'm just getting into my thoughts on the book. I struggled getting into it at first. It is a very dense read, I would say, because there's not a lot of chapter breaks, like, at all. It's very much split into parts, but there's no chapter breaks within those parts. I thought the pacing was a bit weird. I didn't really understand the character at first, but the middle part where Paul transforms into Polly and starts dating this girl Diane and moves to Provincetown, this like change in scenery, I don't know what it was about it, but I started to really love the main character. I really started to love him and appreciate him. I thought he was a really deeply complex like character. We get to know so much about him throughout this book. So well characterized, like probably one of the most memorable characters that I've ever read about. And yeah, I started to really enjoy this book. Overall, I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 3.75 stars. I did think it could have been a lot shorter. Not only was the pacing weird and there weren't a lot of chapter breaks, but there were also some short stories that were scattered throughout Paul's perspective of the narration, which they didn't seem to really take place from Paul's perspective. A lot of them took place in the perspective, they were kind of told in these like folklorish like tones, as if this was like a story that Paul was reading about. And it was very strange. I didn't really think it went well with Paul's story. I think it would have been a lot better if we cut those stories out and just read about Paul, because these stories really did not hit me well. Like at first I thought it was still Paul that was telling these stories, so I was like, what's happening now? Something about a fisherman and a fisherman's wife, like I'm confused. Yeah, so I didn't get those short stories, and they kind of just took me out of the reading experiences. So yeah, if those were cut, I probably would have given this book 4 stars. I think this was one of the most memorable reads of this month, and I definitely one day want to come back to this book because there's a lot I probably missed just due to how dense this material is and how many details are put in, so how many Easter eggs. I'm not from the time period, obviously, so I didn't get a lot of the references, but I would love to read it again with fresh eyes and see if I caught any details that I might have missed upon first read. This synopsis sounds as interesting to you as it did for me. I would highly recommend you check it out because it was a really unique read. I don't think I've read any book like it, and I'm looking forward to checking out the author's other works. The next pink book that I read in the month of September is Manipulate Me, Babe, I Trust You by Emily Perkovich. This is a poetry collection from poet Emily Perkovich. When I saw this arc on NetGalley, I had to check it out, and it did not disappoint. The cover is beautiful and so pink, and the inside is as beautiful. This is a hybrid collection of poetry and graphics. You know those word clouds? That's basically what these poems reminded me of. Like, there's one where the poem is shaped like a knife, and there's little pieces of the poem like dripping down like blood. It's so cool, and it looked a little bit odd on NetGalley when I was reading it in my ebook format, but I'm sure in printed version it looks a lot neater and better. This was really uniquely formatted. I've never seen a collection of poetry like formatted like this, and it made for a very memorable and lovely reading experience. Emily Perkovich's verse is so lovely. This is my first read of her work like in a book format, but I have read some of her writing on Instagram. I love these poems equally. You can do whatever you want with poetry, and it's amazing, and this book definitely encapsulates that. I definitely want to check out more of her writing in the future. The next pink book that I read in the month of September is The Feeling of Falling in Love by Mason Deaver. You might know that last year I wanted to read this book, but I didn't. I couldn't read it the month that I was reading pink books, so I decided to save it for this year, and I almost didn't get to this one because, as I mentioned earlier, I had to extend my month of reading by another week, so I almost didn't read this book, but I did because Mason Deaver is amazing, and I needed to read this. Mason Deaver is a very well-known YA author, and I really love their work so much, so that's why this book is a very highly anticipated read. This book is a lighthearted contemporary romance that follows angsty trans boy Neil Kearney, who, in an attempt to get his ex Josh, he refuses to think of his ex Josh as an ex because he doesn't think they were dating in the first place, but nonetheless he does break this boy's heart by telling him that he doesn't love him after Josh tells him I love you. It was a very messy breakup, to say the least, and in an attempt to get Josh off Neil's back, he takes his goody two-shoes roommate, which he previously had expressed dislike for. His name is Wyatt. He takes Wyatt on a fake dating family wedding excursion to Beverly Hills, California. All of his friends are baffled, Josh is baffled, but he's trying to make everyone believe this relationship just so he can get them off his back. This book gives trans teenagers a voice. Neil is a delightfully flawed character, and by the end of the book, I think he does take accountability for his actions and learns from his mistakes. The ending felt a little bit rushed in my opinion, not as neatly put together as some of other Mason Deaver's works, but overall I really enjoyed this book. The dialogue is so funny, like the wit. I love Mason Deaver's writing style so much, and the characters are so realistic. I would have also liked to have seen more of Wyatt because Wyatt is a sweetheart and I want to be friends with Wyatt. I do wish we got to see more of Neil's other friends. Neil has like a whole other group of friends that we don't really get to see like at all because they're not at the wedding, and I wish we got to see more of them. And as I said, I felt this ending of the story was a bit rushed, almost cheesy, but overall it's escapism. It's a very lighthearted read. It made me realize how much I miss Mason Deaver's writing. I gave this book 4 stars. I highly recommend it. On to the last pink book that I read in the month of September, which is Big Girl with Buck Teeth by Shyla Jones. I actually own this book. It is another poetry chapbook published by my chapbook publisher, Bottle Cap Press. I bought this book a year ago or something, so it has been sitting for quite a while. I wanted to save it for this pink reading month, but as you can see, the cover is super gorgeous, very pink, as well as the blurb in the back as well. And yeah, as the synopsis says, this is an exploration of girlhood as it exists for those who don't look like everyone else. It tackles themes of queerness, blackness, mental health, religion, and fatness, all against a Catholic backdrop. I don't have a lot to say about this chapbook. Some of my favorite poems included Cat Call Me, I'm Only 13, Strawberry Fever, and 26. A lot of these themes very much resonated with me as far as like queerness and girlhood goes, and talking about how other people perceive you differently from how you perceive yourself. Like, all of these themes were very much apparent throughout these poems, and I loved the verse as well. It was super lovely, so I definitely plan on checking out more of Shyla Jones's works in the future. And yeah, overall I'm really glad that I was able to finally read this book. As I said, I bought this book about a year ago, honestly, and I had kind of forgotten about it until I got to this challenge of reading pink books, and yeah, I'm so glad that I did, and I think it made for the perfect last book to this month's reading challenge. And I gave it 4.5 stars. I thought it was a really lovely and solid debut poetry chapbook. Yeah guys, those are all 11 pink books that I read in the month of September. I'm putting quotes because again, had to extend it a bit. It's okay. We all gotta take our time with reading. Sometimes we don't get to all the books that we want, but that's okay. So here are just some of the books that I will be reading in the month of October. And yeah, overall, I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please make sure to give it a like, drop a comment about what you read in the month of September, and if you read any of these books that I read, please make sure to share your thoughts. Before you go, just a heads up that my debut poetry chapbook, Blue Pearl, is available for purchase from Bottle Cap Press. You can check that out in the link in my description. But yeah, guys, overall, I hope you have a fantastic day, week, month, whatever you're feeling, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!